Before we grant lifetime tenure to federal judges, and particularly justices of the Supreme Court, we must make sure that they have the highest ethical standards.
Did a former senator from Wisconsin foreshadow the corrupt tenure of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito?
And in these days of corruption investigations and indictments in Washington, we also need judges who are beyond ethical reproach. In 1990, when the judge appeared before this committee in connection with his nomination to the Court of Appeals, Judge Alito promised to recuse himself from cases involving a mutual fund company with which he had substantial investments, Vanguard. He kept those investments throughout his service on the Court of Appeals and still has them today. But in 2002, he sat on a panel in a case involving Vanguard. Since his nomination to the Supreme Court, we have now heard different explanations from the nominee and his supporters about why he failed to recuse himself. Needless to say, the shifting explanations and justifications are somewhat troubling.
With recent revelations,
Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito is facing scrutiny over a new report claiming he accepted a lavish vacation from a conservative billionaire with frequent business before the court.
Well, it appears so.
The report says Justice Samuel Alito did not report gifts on annual financial disclosure forms, including a private flight to Alaska and other amenities provided by billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Singer during a fishing trip in 2008.
A fishing trip, the sport that knows no bounds. However,
you have an unelected billionaire basically funding a super billionaire style, friend of a billionaire lifestyle for the Thomases that they hid from everyone.
If any indication was needed at the game the ultra-rich and powerful play with American politics, look no further than the Supreme Court. Justice Clarence Thomas did not report his lavish vacations with GOP megadonor and Nazi collector Harlan Crow. By their side,
this stunning image captures the real story. Not only are Thomas and Crow pictured here at Crow's luxurious Adirondack resort, where this painting hangs, we also see Federalist Society co-chairman Leonard Leo, who the Washington Post reports directed tens of thousands of dollars of business to the firm of Ginny Thomas. And then there's Mark Paoletta. He's the former general counsel for the Office of Management and Budget under Donald Trump. Conservatives like Leonard Leo. He's one of the most powerful people in conservative legal circles in this country. In fact, the most powerful. He's the architect of this court.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been under scrutiny for accepting private flights and luxury vacations from Texas billionaire Harlan Crow. Thomas has said he didn't need to disclose the trips since he and Crow are close friends, and Crow didn't have business before the court. But in at least one case, he did.
The conflicts of interest, currying favors, and buying legislation appears to be their battlefield. What we are learning is what we have known for some time. Money in politics is the root of all evil.
Alito has written a panicky, sloppy op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in which he actually says the seat, quote, as far as I'm aware, would have otherwise been vacant. It was my understanding that this would not impose any extra cost on Mr. Singer. In other words, if it was worth anything, why did he give it to me for free?
Which is utter nonsense. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. If it were financials, the number would be exponentially higher. ProPublica found the following on this trip. Singer's hedge fund came before the court at least 10 times in cases where his role was often covered by the legal press and mainstream media. In 2014, the court agreed to resolve a key issue in a decade-long battle between Singer's hedge fund and the nation of Argentina. Alito did not recuse himself from the case and voted with the 7-1 majority in Singer's favor. The hedge fund was ultimately paid $2.4 billion.
Alito wrote that he followed what I understood to be standard practice by excluding the flight from his financial report.
Via ProPublica once more, by failing to disclose the private jet flight Singer provided, Alito appears to have violated a federal law that requires justices to disclose most gifts, according to ethics law experts. When we talk about systems being put in place to favor the top 1% of society, the most powerful and ultra-rich of society, look no further than the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the only court in the country with no enforceable code of ethics. These scandals show how lifetime tenures can engender justices with a startling sense of entitlement and a belief that they are beyond accountability. Crow had purchased 3 properties belonging to Thomas and his family, a transaction worth more than $100,000 that Thomas never disclosed. Politico reported more recently that when Justice Neil Gorsuch sold property he co-owned shortly after becoming a justice, and because of this, the court is rife with corruption. He disclosed the sale but omitted that the property was purchased by a person whose firm frequently has cases before the high court. And earlier this year, There were stories about the legal recruiting career of Chief Justice John Roberts' wife and whether it raised ethical concerns that she was paid large sums for placing lawyers at firms that appear before the court. Leo, it should be noted, ever the matchmaker, organized the Alaska trip with Alito and billionaire Singer, the longtime head of the Federalist Society. Leo helped Alito win confirmation to the court. Singer and the lodge's owner were major donors to the Federalist Society.